Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with agenda item 1, conduct public hearing before the City Council of City of Meadows Place, Texas, to hear any and all persons desiring to be heard concerning City of Meadows Place municipal budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. I'm opening the public hearing. Before we take public comment, our Finance Director, Anna Maria, is going to give you a brief review of the budget process, just so that we're all on the same page in the same book.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council. I want to review and remind everybody that the budget that is being proposed, adopted tonight, is basically two budgets. There's the general operating budget as well as the utility operating budget. The general operating budget, the revenue sources are from property taxes, the sales tax, city fees, fines and forfeitures. Expenditures for the general operations is for city services, public safety, fire protection, road maintenance, parks and rec, and city staff compensation. On the utility side, the revenue source comes strictly from utility fees. It is used for and to maintain the water and sewer service for our residents and commercial properties, as well as to maintain equipment and provide garbage service.
I want to take this moment to remind everybody that Meadows Place is a full-service city. We do not have an HOA, we do not have a MUD, we do not have a LID. Our city funds everything.
And just to review, what I've got up here on the slide is a timeline of all the activity that has taken place up until this date, beginning in May and June, when the department chairs met with Nick and myself, and we reviewed last year's budget and looked forward to next year's budget to see what adjustments needed to be made. In preparation, our first workshop with City Council was June 19th. After that, we continued to review the budget along with the new mayor, and July 17th, we had a second workshop. After that, the CIP was adopted by council at a council meeting on July 23rd. They also set the date for future public hearings. The end of July, is when we got information from the county on property appraisal values as well as our tax rate calculations. Moving forward, August 13th is when City Council met last week and set the maximum proposed tax rate. And then there were some public hearing notices on the website as well as in newsletters, and we're here today on August 20th. Everything highlighted are basically meetings where City Council was present and the public was invited to attend.
I would like to take this moment to note that a lot of work is done necessarily with only preliminary numbers. We do not get final numbers from the county until the end of July, early August. In all public meetings, we really encourage the public to be there. This is an open process and we want your input.
Okay, I want to just highlight on the general operations, our revenue sources. By far, you can tell that property tax on the left-hand side is our dominant revenue source. What we're looking at in that chart is 6 years worth of data. So property tax is the primary source. Sales tax, franchise, fines and forfeitures, park rentals are all very minor in comparison, and you can tell they're pretty stagnant, especially sales tax. The last 3 years is kind of running pretty flat, as are all the other areas. And from an expenditure side, this is the pie chart kind of showing the breakdown between the departments as well as the salaries, compensation. The two biggest pieces of the pie are for salary and benefits across the city. That accounts for about 65% of the budget. So any changes in salaries affects the budget pretty tremendously. The proposed budget that we're here to discuss uses the property values from the end of July, the certified property values from the CAD. Also is using the maximum property tax of 0.884207 that was proposed last week. It is the maximum. It does include $250,000 for future infrastructure, and it also assumes that there's going to be $280,000 coming from EDC in addition to that $250,000. It does include a 5% cost of living for salary increase for all city staff. It is maintaining current service levels to the residents. There are some increases built in for fees, but those are for park rentals and tennis cards. In the budget is a decrease in the newspaper, or the printed newsletter that is being mailed out to the residents from every month to be a quarterly publication. We're increasing street repair from $50,000 to $75,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is in the budget. There is no change in the budget for the road fee funding, so that remains at $10 per month, which is about $185,000 a year. And otherwise, there are some other small changes, but they're pretty minimal across the board. So this is what is in the proposed budget. I said we have $250,000 for infrastructure, for future infrastructure. What is not in the budget are items that were in the capital improvement proposal. What is showing on this graph are items that are unfunded for the next 12 years. The two big bars are for road bills, basically Dorrance Phase 3 and 4, and they've been split by about 5 years. We're hoping to raise about $2 million for each of those projects. And in between are other unfunded projects like pool replaster, the lake erosion needs to be taken care of, need to make some upgrades on the PD facility, drainage outfalls, sound walls, and park equipment. So for the next 12 years, if you were to average it out, it is about $755,000 that we do not have funded.
I want to take this moment to notice that these are needs, not wants. This slide right here, the CIP, supports our general fund, our capital improvement projects. This is separate from the utility fund. The capital improvement projects, the utility fund capital improvement projects, which is supported through the utility budget, which Maria is about to talk about.
Okay, so the next slide is kind of looking at the possible tax rates and budget balances. So what we have up here is the current tax rate of 0.79961, as well as the tax rates from the CAD, the no new revenue tax rate of 0.790308, the voter approval tax rate 0.838722, and the proposed tax rate, which is actually the de minimis tax rate at 0.884207. In the right-hand column is the proposed budget balance if any one of these tax rates was adopted. This is in addition to what I just said was in the proposed budget. So for the current tax rate, we would have a budget balance of $5,317 on top of the $250,000 that already is in the budget. We go down to the proposed tax rate, there could be another $446,000 that could go towards future infrastructure projects.
I just want to remind everybody that this is the proposed tax rate.
Correct.
It is not the adopted tax rate.
Correct.
It behooves council to propose the highest tax rate, so all options are still on the table.
And three of these tax rates support the budget as it stands right now. Without, so what does that mean for the homeowner? So right now the CAD is telling us that the average assessed homestead in City of Meadows Place is $286,894. If we look at those tax rates and what that means for potential taxes, we can look at if you have no exemptions, if you have a homestead exemption of 20% of the value, a homestead with the over age 65, which is $30,000. 80% of the homes in Meadows Place have a homestead exemption. In addition, 35% of the homes also have the over 65 exemption. I'm going to look at just that middle line, the one highlighted in yellow. That's the homestead exemption, since that affects most people. We go all the way over to the right-hand section. The yearly increase for a homeowner, comparing the current tax rate of 0.79961 and the VAR, is $90. If you go from current to the proposed, which would be the maximum, it's $194. So anything in between would be what you would be looking at. And then I just have a couple of slides on the utility proposed budget. The utility proposed budget that's in the packet continues to implement the 10% rate increase for water and sewer that was started 3 years ago. It also includes an increase to the garbage fee of $1, and it continues to collect the utility infrastructure fee of $10 a month, which amounts to that $189,000 a year, and that's to build a reserve for future expenditures. This is the chart that we used 3 years ago to say we needed to start increasing utility rates. I don't know if I can do this, but the yellow line going down is where we would be if we did not have rate increases. We would continue to dig ourselves deeper and deeper into a hole. So that the yellow is going down. The red line, vertical line going up is where we started. We were already in the hole, and we've been kind of climbing out of the hole. So where the yellow arrow is and the green arrow going up is our projected revenue every year. We are projecting with that yellow arrow to be just above $50,000 in the green with the budget, and that it seems to be on target for this slide.
And this is just a reminder that our infrastructure is very old. This fund is supposed to stand on its own without help from the general fund, and all maintenance and repairs are incredibly expensive on this equipment.
And so similar slide to on the general operations, the utility capital improvement projects that are currently unfunded, looking out 12 years. The bars kind of show what's unfunded. So you can see we don't have anything in the first few years, 25 through 28, and that's because we're in the middle of some pretty big projects. The wastewater treatment plant, so we're not planning on doing anything for a few years. In those years, that's when that $189,000 will start to build. By the end of 2028, we should have approximately $800,000 saved for projects, but as you can tell, running out the average for the next 12 years, we need about $813,000 a year per year for these projects, and the projects being rehab the sewer lines and continued improvements at the water treatment plant and street water line replacement and water storage tank rehab and water wells rehab. So very expensive projects there. The proposed budget for utility, revenue over expenditures is at about 55,000 in the proposed budget. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Anna Marie. I really appreciate it. We are now going to take public comments on the proposed budget as posted on the agenda. Remember, state your name, state your address for the record, and I have a 3-minute timer on. Would you like me to indicate, like it, is it 3-minute timer on public hearing?
On public hearing, there is no time limit.
No timer? Okay.
As a public.
Okay. I think we're okay.
All right. First of all, what is a taxpayer-approved rate? You said on one slide the tax rate was taxpayer-approved. When did we ever approve that?
I thought it was no new revenue.
No new revenue in the VAR.
Go back to the slide.
Voter approved.
All right, voter approved. I don't remember me approving anything.
So basically, the way the legislature changed it a few years ago, there's 3 new terms on different kinds of tax rates. There's what's called the no new revenue rate, and that rate is set that basically generates money to where you collect the exact same amount of tax revenue in both years, last year and this year. Property tax, there you go. They call that the no new revenue rate. Then there's something called the voter approval tax rate. That rate is set at 3.5% above that no new revenue rate we just talked about. So basically the exact same amount of money we collected last year plus 3.5% is called the voter approval rate. The 8% doesn't apply to us.
It doesn't mean the voters actually vote on it. The terminology is terrible.
Yeah.
So let's say your valuations go up tremendously. You can actually lower the tax rate, and you still have to say we're increasing taxes because you're increasing the revenue.
Well, you're increasing the taxes because the
valuations have gone up.
Have gone
Yes.
up, right?
Correct. So if you kept the rate the same, but values went up,
Yes,
then you're collecting more money this year over last year.
correct.
And that is a tax increase,
That's,
technically.
That's always been that way.
But now they've capped it at 3.5%. So that's why they said that's the legislature said 3.5% is what we're going to allow. It doesn't require real voter approval. It's saying, hey, if your assessments go up pretty high, you're going to have to stop at 3.5% because that's all we're going to allow you to say the voters have approved.
Yeah, let's see if I can get this right. So if you go at 3.4%, the residents have no recourse.
Okay.
If you go at 5%, which is between 3.5 and 8, and you're over 30,000 people in population, then the people can petition you to lower your tax rate. But if you're under 30,000, it doesn't apply?
Well, it does apply. You can still petition, even if you're a smaller city, if it goes above the VAR. What smaller cities can take advantage of is what's called the de minimis rate. The de minimis rate allows a smaller city, that's a city under 30,000 population, to generate an additional $500,000 over your previous year's levy. And if you do that, then you can do it and only be subject to a petition of the residents. If a petition doesn't happen, then that rate goes into effect.
Well, we're over 30,000 people.
No, we're not.
We're under 30.
Okay, that's right.
We're
I
under
got my
30.
numbers wrong. I've been working too hard today.
So basically, any rate between that VAR, the voter approval rate, that 3.5,
Yes.
and the de minimis rate, which generates 500,000 more this year over last year, anything
Yes.
between that, the residents would have to petition for an election, which means they'd have to go out and get signatures, and the city secretary would have to certify it and that kind of thing. If that petition was successful, then the city council would call for an election on a rollback.
But Terry, when it's your turn, you can come up. So now, if we were over 30,000 people, and we went above the 3.5%, then we automatically have to have an election. But that doesn't apply because we're not over 30,000.
Okay. So in Meadows Place, when would we have to have an election if you?
We would be forced to do an election if we went above the de minimis tax rate.
Correct.
Above the minimum tax rate?
The de minimis, the 500,000, the bottom one.
So that's 0.88 right now. If we went to 0.9 or 1%, we would have to have an election.
Terry, the attorneys don't agree with you. The attorneys don't agree with what you say on this tax rate.
Yeah, we
have argued over this time and time again.
Yeah.
We're going to go with our attorney, Terry.
Mike, did you have any additional comments or questions?
Yeah. So in Meadows Place, what would be the tax rate where you would have to call an election?
Can you go back to that screen, Anna Maria? The one that shows the actual rate.
Yeah, there you go. That one.
If we went to 0.885, we would be forced to have an election. We would automatically have to call it.
All right.
Yeah. And if there is a petition, because we looked at 0.8, let's say we say 0.87, and somebody says, I think that's too much. If there's a petition that generates enough signatures and we have to call an election, that election happens and people vote not to have the tax increase, it would go back to the 0.83.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 0.38.
What is the proposed tax rate that you're proposing right now with this budget to fund the budget?
So we advertised 0.884.
Yeah.
Just so we could have a conversation. We can adopt the current tax rate, which is 0.79961, and we've got a balanced budget.
Oh.
We can adopt the VAR rate, and that puts $200,000 additional into infrastructure. Or we can adopt that 0.884 and put $450,000 into infrastructure. That's what we want to have the conversation for, because the other option is, we had some people say increase the road use fee from $10 to $20 just to speed this up. That rate of 0.884 is an equivalent of going to $30 a month on the road use fee. We want to have the conversation. We want the feedback from the citizens. I've had exactly one person email me about the rate, and Sharon Leal actually took the time to email us. I put this out there on Facebook to generate discussion. I hear from the same 12 people.
Well, I'm here tonight to tell you. Now, if the infrastructure that you're funding out of the general revenue, I thought the infrastructure funding was coming out of some other budget.
So the infrastructure fund puts it into what we'll call it a lockbox.
A what?
A lockbox. It can only be used on infrastructure.
All right.
This money goes into the general fund. Your current council wants to use that for infrastructure, but it's any legal purpose fund. So your future councils could redirect that money. If we sell bonds, we need to go to a tax rate. For $10 million in bonds, we need a tax rate of 0.94. And you're locked in every year to make that payment. You cannot reduce it in tough times. You're just locked in.
And that would require a vote of the citizens to pass a bond.
To pass a bond?
Yeah.
Probably.
Because they'd have to pay for it, and
Right.
it'd be very expensive.
And that's why, like I said, we want to have a conversation. go drive down the streets. Do you want your street to look like the one you've got in front of you right now? Or do you want Dorrance east of Kirkwood?
East of
The brand new piece. What do you want?
Well, for one thing, I want is to fund the items that the citizens use every day: sidewalks, streets, water,
Toilets.
sewer, stuff like that. You can do away with the nature center, because only I've said this before and I'll say it again, only less than 10% of the residents use that nature center. Why fund something that the residents don't use? And I think you could fund $300,000 probably by the sale of that nature center into the infrastructure fund. So that's my opinion. So the tax rate that you're proposing, or the budget that you're proposing tonight we go through the budget, is that correct? This is budget only. This is not tax rate.
This is budget only, but it affects what we do on the tax rate.
Yeah, you got to have the tax rate to fund this thing, right?
Correct.
And going back to what the mayor started with, and Ann Maria said, the budget that's proposed, that was worked on, assumed that we would not have a tax increase, that we would keep the current rate. So we're balanced operationally balanced at the current rate of 0.7996. So that's the budget that's in front of us to basically vote on tonight. And that puts some money towards infrastructure, but not a lot. It puts $250,000 towards infrastructure that we haven't had in there in the past. It does increase the revenues. It increases so that $5,300 that you're looking at on the screen behind me is the budget that she proposed and the tax rate that we currently have. What we're proposing, because we had to give the maximum that we would use last week, we had to set, we won't go above this. We can go below 0.88. We just can't go above it at this point. We've committed to that as our maximum rate. So next week on Monday, we're going to have a similar public hearing where we're going to talk about where we land between 0.7996 and 0.884. But the budget tonight balances at 0.7996.
Okay, so the additional revenues, if you go above the 7996, goes for, you're saying that goes for infrastructure?
Correct.
All of it?
That's what this council wants to do, yes.
We can only commit to the years that we're working in.
So what would happen if you did a lot of cutting in the current budget or something like that? You could fund more towards the infrastructure.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
So there are people that say, I don't go to the concerts in the park, you should do away with those.
Go with
We've
what?
got the concerts in the park. So they say, I don't go to those, so the city shouldn't pay for those. We've got people that say, my kids are grown, we shouldn't, the pool should be closed. So we've got a different, we've got things we have to do. You want your toilet to flush, you want water to show up.
That's right. I want the drains to drain.
Right. So the question then is, what is the proper balance? We had somebody say that, we should do away with the landscaping on Kirkwood. Yes, we can do that. We can go in and tear out all that landscaping, put in St. Augustine grass. We can turn the sprinklers off. It would save money. Is that what we want to do?
Well, when you're in a budget crisis at home or in a business or something like that, you look at everything. Mm-hmm. And you look at all the things that we can do to save money. And you award those people that do well. Like the police chief. He deserves a raise. I don't care what the budget is, but anyway. So, every year, I've only got 2 more statements to make and I'll be through. Every year since we have become a city, the tax rate has increased. And what I mean by that is the amount of taxes that I pay. and it's compounded. The tax rate that we paid last year was around 4 or 5% extra or something like that. Well, now you're asking for another 4 or 5% on top of that, and it goes up and up and up. When we first moved out here, I think my taxes were either $700 or $800 a year. So, I think you need to put emphasis on what we need, do away with some of the amenities, and go from there.
Well, I will say in this budget, there are changes so that some of those amenities become more self-funding. There's increases in some of the fees that we're charging for tennis courts, for swimming, for other things. So Nature Center, there is some revenue offsets for some of those expenses. So we have looked at some of those fees. But I think, as Anne-Marie pointed out, about 67% of our budget goes to salaries. And we have good people. This past year, Chief came to us and said, hey, our starting salary for police officers is this. All the surrounding cities are $6,000 to $7,000 higher. We're going to lose all our people if we don't do something. We made a decision at that point to raise the salaries, and part of that was already planned, but those are the kind of things that if we want to keep good people in the city,
I understand.
Our staff is there. And the other thing is that the inflation that the city's seen is the same inflation that all of us are seeing. The cost of gas, the cost of materials, the cost of a pump, the cost of a water main break.
I'm glad you brought up a water main break. Last year, the cost for repairing the water mains or water leaks was over $400,000.
Yes.
That is a ton of money.
Yep.
Now, and that's not to even count the thousands of gallons of water that was wasted going down the drain. Water is a natural resource. So where in the budget do you have that this year about repairing the water mains? What I like to do is propose this. You go back and you look at the water mains that break easily. You've got the data. You know where those water lines are. Go back and repair those lines. And then plow the money that those water lines would be breaking back into repairing other lines or something like that. But those water lines are over 50 years old. And I replaced all the water lines in my house, and I was surprised to see all the gunk that was inside there. So what's in the budget this year for replacing those?
Well, what's in the budget is the $450,000 to repair the brakes.
So
and
that's still in the 24-25 budget.
And I don't know the exact number, and we'd have to find it in here, but it is in a good year we save a little money. In a bad year we spend extra. That's why we're increasing the rates for the utility fees 10% a year, is to start building up that fund so we can do it. We had 2 or 3 years where we ran in the red. And when you run in the red, you can't replace.
Well, you need to do something about that. That's terrible.
Well, we're trying to, but every time that we go to increase fees or we go to increase taxes, the outcry comes.
Well, you need to put your emphasis on the correct things that the people use every day. So that's all I have.
Mike, thank you so much. Would anybody else like to come to the podium?
Terry Henley, 12203 Austin Drive. I've been involved in this budgets and the tax rates and what they did in 2019, and many, many conversations with Bill Longley, and he's the expert when it comes to the tax rates and what you can and can't do, and most of the attorneys have come to Austin and got their training from Bill Longley. And again, what I'm getting ready to say, and I'll back it up with Bill Longley, and Charlie even called me a couple of years ago and said, Henley, you know, you're right. A city of less than 30,000 people and revenue, ad valorem tax revenue, does not increase more than $500,000. We have a rate that we can go up to 8% without triggering a possible petition to have the tax rate go before the voters. So as a council, we can go up to 8% above the previous year as long as it does not increase by $500,000 and nothing happens. If we exceed the 8% rate, then a petition could be set forth to require an election to set the budget. And usually when that happens, the budget will remain unchanged. And again, Bill Longley and I have had many discussions on that, and y'all talk about all this other, what's it called, de minimis and all the other junk. It certainly applies to all counties and all cities that have revenue that increase, ad valorem tax increase more than $500,000. But from our standpoint, and what we really have to adhere to, is as long as we don't go above 8%, as long as it doesn't increase more than $500,000, then we're fine. Anything else is, and attorneys argue, and they will charge you the $200 or $300 or what they charge you an hour. And I guarantee you, with Bill Longley and TML, what is said is a fact for cities of our size. Now, regardless of what y'all do, and you know what the attorneys say, again, those attorneys have gone to TML and got their training from the usually the experts at TML and interpreting all these laws. So with that being said, I want to go to a copy of the budget you just gave me. And you're showing the ad valorem tax increase this next year of $687,000. It doesn't even come close to your 400 or whatever's up there on the screen. It's not up there now. Where does the $687,000? That's almost a 20% increase in ad valorem tax revenues, which is totally and completely unacceptable. Now, anything above 8% is a problem. I've been up here more than once, and Kurt was at the last meeting 2 or 3 years ago. Remember what it was? Y'all were at 16 or 17%. And the current rate that was at, get my sheet out here, proposing to go to the 8.84 brings in another, according to last week's meeting, over $500,000, and it's somewhere between 11 and 12% increase over the previous year, which is totally and completely unacceptable. Now, I understand utilities and your water and sewer and all that stuff has had some, some losses. We've exceeded what revenues we brought in. The utilities need to be on a standalone basis. If we got to increase fees by 10% to make sure we've got some reserves to any anticipated expenditures and utilities, water and wastewater and all that stuff, then we need to have a reserve there. And whatever it takes to build that reserve, that's where the fees need to be. Maybe they need to be increased 20%. But we don't need to use ad valorem tax out of M&O to make up the difference in our utility cost. Now, is there an ordinance that you have that says X amount of dollars, 250 or a percent, goes into infrastructure funds? Do we have an ordinance? We just kind of on our own says that's what we're going to do. And I've discussed it with y'all before that if you have X amount of dollars going into infrastructure funds for capital improvements, that's fine as long as you explain it and that's how you use it. But if you wind up charging, going to 8% increase or 12% or whatever it is, and then you use that for M&O, that's not acceptable.
We haven't done that for the past. Rick has been a champion on your behalf for the past 3 years. That's come up, and each time he said, hey, that money's not back in there. We need to put a line and put that separated out and make sure we fund that out of our general fund and not.
And you're trying to put that in for the capital improvements and infrastructure, which is good. No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Anne Marie set up an account.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with a little extra increase. But let me remind you, in 5 years you've done one block? How many blocks are there in this city? How many? 100, 200?
Well, and that's
the rate you're going. It's going to take you 100 to 200 years to ever get there. And make improvements and improve the infrastructure, streets and water and sewer lines. It's going to take a bond. You don't have a choice if you're going to get there. Period.
But Terry, $10 million in bond takes us to 0.94, and you're bitching about 0.88.
The tax rate I'm bitching about and talking about is M&O. Capital improvement's a different story, okay? And as long as you're using $200,000 or $300,000 a year for capital improvements, that's fine. But nothing that says next year you won't do that.
Correct.
Okay?
The current council has been doing that. This is the third year.
At some point, it's got to be tied to capital, expenditures, and you're required to pay down that capital debt every year. And if you don't do that, you're never going to get there.
And the way to lock it in, Terry, would be to increase the road use fee to 30 instead of doing this tax rate.
True. No, that's another way. Fees are another way of getting there.
Is there support for that? And
at some point, that road use fee has got to continue to increase, whether we like it or not.
And I think council, if the citizens said we want to increase the speed of the road and water line replacement, and instead of doing $30 on road use, maybe we do 20 on road and 20 on infrastructure that pays for the water lines, we get to the same point, but it's locked in. I think council would be okay with that.
To get where you need to get, that road use fee on the utility bill would need to be about $1,000 a month, okay? It's not going to get there with 10 or 20 bucks. And to make it happen, and we can't be 100 years from now still trying to get Block 15 done. I'm just, those are the facts.
No, but part of what we look at and part of the balance, and I'm not bringing it up tonight, but part of the discussion is how do we? Anne Marie mentioned we've got a third of our people that are over 65, which means they're probably living on Social Security and a fixed income. If you put a $30 road fee on there, that's going to hurt them a lot more than it's going to hurt somebody who might get a little more value and move into the neighborhood and know they're going to pay a little more taxes because they're paying $350 for their house instead of the $75 they paid 30 years ago. We're not trying to price people out of the neighborhood, so part of what we're going to have to discuss is increasing that over 65 exemption. That came up at last week's meeting. We talked about that. And
I'll propose that. Over 65. But right now, you look at the tax on average homestead, just with what you're proposing, and it's on the sheet here you have online, it's showing an increase of $336, or showing nearly 20% increase in our ad valorem tax for homestead. I'm just, based on the current fee.
That's it right there, what she just calculated. On an average $286,000, which is the average homestead that the CAD gave us for Meadows. We're looking at that. If we increase to the voter-approved rate, it's $90 more a year. If we go up to the 0.88, it's $194 a year. So less than $20 a month. But that versus
one you have online, which you pulled up for next week's meeting, says average tax on average homestead is $1,692, and 23 and 24 is 2029, and the increase is 336 or 19.91%. I'm just saying from 22 to 23, it went up nearly 20%. It's every year just the tax, and that's for homestead. But again, back to the budget, where does the $687,000 come from? It's on your proposed budget here, right? Huh? I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had my mic off. New buildings. So the Tim Hortons is new.
New buildings.
Yeah, new buildings doesn't count against your VAR. Terry, go look it up. So we've got new buildings, we've got remodels, and that doesn't count against your number, correct, Anna Maria, if I've got that right?
Yeah, on the website is the tax rate calculation worksheet from the CAD. You can go through all the calculations that they use to get to these tax rates. And honestly, I've looked at that, and there was just several items that go in there, especially on the VAR. So if we were not at the VAR last year, we basically lost some revenue. So they add that into this year's VAR number. So there's just all sorts of calculations in there. I advise you to go look at that worksheet and get as confused as I am.
465, 40. Okay. The actual total tax levy online, when you look at online and what you have for next week, includes the 0.5% ad valorem tax. So you got to add those two together to get it. 4.3, and you're going to. But online, it has 2023 4311 $4,311,000, 2024 $4,818,000, which you went up nearly $500,000 from 23 to 24, and increase $507,000, or that's 11.77%. So the current rate that you're proposing right now is putting it close to 12%. Based on what you're showing online. Anything above 8%,
no. You've got to back out all the new construction from that number, Terry. The VAR is based on existing buildings in existing conditions.
Right.
And so the Tim Hortons over here gets backed out of that number.
As long as the revenue stays below $500,000 increase and the rate is 8% or less, I'm okay with it. Anything above an 8%, I'm not okay with it. And right now, the current rate that you're proposing is up in the 11 to 12% range. Okay? Period.
Well, our discussion next week on Monday will be to finalize the actual rate. We can look at some additional numbers. We'll go back and look at what you're looking at online, and we'll have making sure we look at the TML guidelines when it comes to de minimis and small cities, so we don't have any confusion about that. But our goal tonight is to get feedback on the budget, and some of the comments that have been made, again, Rick's point and my point last week when we talked about this is we want to hear from the public we've got an old city. We've got people in the city that are on fixed incomes, and we know we're going to have repairs that are needed. We've asked the staff to create a balanced budget based on no new revenue so that if we have additional revenue, it can be used for infrastructure and capital improvements. We know we've got to get to work on the things that have been kicked down the road or whatever. We're in an old city that needs a lot
I know
of
it's
work.
costing more. I've had to pull another $20,000 or $30,000 out of investment just to make ends meet this past year. It's
Yeah.
tough.
So
And at some point, it's going to be a real issue.
yeah, and so part of it is how do we balance what we need to do with what we can afford to do with what our citizens are telling us, hey, this is hurting more than it needs to, or this needs to be cut, or this needs to be added. And part of it is amenities, which we've raised some fees to offset some of those. We've made the decision to cut back on the newsletter from monthly to quarterly. Last season, we said no to a dog park that people wanted to have, but it was going to cost us another $50,000 plus maintenance. We're looking at ways of saving. We've made some investments in some of the software tools that we're using. We've done some things with our sprinkler maintenance to lower our overall costs. We're doing things with grants so that we don't have to pay for police radios and jackets. There's so much that the city's doing to bring down the overall citizen cost that maybe doesn't show up well on an Excel spreadsheet budget. But know that we're working on it because we're residents here. I feel the pain. I know what it's like to not have an income other than what I pull out of retirement or have from Social Security. So it's not foreign to me to know, hey, what do we make a choice of here? So that's kind of where I think all of us sitting around the dime are in the same situation. I wish Kelly were here tonight because she's a good spokesperson for people that are that, and I think she's been on the council for 12 years. So I'm relatively new, but when I first got here, that was one of the first things I said is, what are we going to do to things going? And now when I ride by on Montecito, I see my name up there, $4 million to redo the sewer plant. Thank goodness we had mobility money, we had county money, we had ARPA money, we had other things, because another year or two, we wouldn't be able to flush our toilets.
That's right. And
I'm not
it's
trying
difficult.
to be overdramatic or hyperbolic.
It's difficult to anticipate all that stuff, and you know expenditure is going to come up, and somehow you've got to build reserves, and it's tough. Now, I understand.
Well,
I only spent 30-something years, doing this every year, and I'm glad I'm not in the loop now, other than I can make some comments and then go back home. Okay.
So we're looking at a $7.5 million budget. Just on general fund, not counting utilities. That's another, $3 million, 2.5, whatever it is. I put a post out on Facebook saying we're going to have a massive tax increase to stir the pot. We have 5 people in here.
We've never had, you're not going to have anybody here. For the most part, they don't understand the budget process. They don't understand the numbers or anything. I mean, I know how it goes, and it's difficult. But
I retire in 5 years. Our plan is to sell the house and buy an RV. This isn't going to affect me one way or the other. I'm trying to set the city up for the future.
It will affect you if we don't do something in the next 5 years. Your house won't be worth a whole lot.
Well, I retired over 10 years ago, and it's getting worse. When you get to a fixed income, let me tell you, you don't realize. Mm-hmm. And I know from a budget standpoint, it's difficult, and you can't stay up with inflation, and you're. You want to give everybody a raise when you really can't, and it's tough. It's tough, but
it is tough. Terry, did you have any additional comments or questions? I really appreciate you coming and sharing tonight.
That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate you. Is there anybody else that would like to come to the podium? Yes, sir.
I get the extra minute. Back in 2003, Some of y'all wasn't even a citizen out here by then, but the city council raised the homestead exemption for people over 65 from 15,000, I think, to 30,000. What it is now, 30,000. Anyway, it hasn't been touched since then. So if you look and see what houses were selling for back in 2003, which was around $100,000 or less, I don't know. And you look at what they're selling for today, to get the same effect for people over 65, that would have to be raised to over $100,000. You need to look at that. You know, we take a serious look at that. Now, you said that you can't be done at this budget. You said it had to be brought up in the spring. Well, then I would highly recommend you put it on the March agenda.
Mike, I want you to know that we are looking at it. We are looking at it. This is something we've been discussing quite a bit.
Okay. Well, the other comment I have is living on fixed income and being retired, it's difficult, especially when you go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say anything else except put your treasures in heaven where they don't rust and the tax collector and the IRS can't get to it.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. All right. We appreciate your comments. Reminder that the public hearing on the tax rate is Monday, August 26th at 6:30. We will now close the public hearing.
Well, before we do, I need to apologize to council. I apparently have myself double booked for next Monday. Somehow I thought it was on Tuesday, and in fact I was trying to correct my wife this morning, and she pulled up the post and showed me I was the one that was incorrect, so I will not be here on Monday.
We meet both nights. Yeah.
Thank you, Rick. All right, I'm going to call for a motion to approve ordinance number 2024-33, approving and adopting the City of Meadows Place municipal budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
David seconds. I will now call upon each council member by name to take the record vote. Once your name is called, answer aye to signify your approval of the motion, or nay to signify your disapproval. Councilmember Baker, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Stagley, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Mertens, state your vote. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Mills is absent and did not vote. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Kopczynski is absent and did not vote. Motion carried. That takes us to agenda item number 2. Are you ready? Number 3. Discussion and consideration of ordinance number 2024-34, amending the utility fund budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, increasing line item 30004656700, utility water maintenance and repairs, $55,300 from the utility fund balance to complete the lead and copper inspections per the TCEQ requirements. I have Rod here tonight, and he's coming to the podium to talk to us a little bit about this agenda item.
Move to approve not getting fined by TCEQ.
Rick moves to approve. Second from Tia. Do you want me to just go ahead and...
I don't know that we need to hear. I mean, this is a state requirement, so we want to make sure that we have safe drinking water.
Yeah, basically this is an improvement in lead and copper requirements. We currently comply with the sampling requirements, and our results are always lower than the minimum threshold. What the EPA wants to do is to achieve 100% reduction or emission of all lead pipes in all cities. This survey that we're doing is identifying the type of material that the city owns on the city side and identifying the type of material on the private side. We're very lucky. I don't believe we have any lead lines in their city. So we have to comply with this. It'll be a one-time only, There will be further improvements on the sampling techniques of future annual requirements, but that's something that we are having no trouble complying with.
Thank you, Rod.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, discussion and consideration of ordinance number 2024-35, amending the general fund budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, increasing line item 100040520 Public Works vehicle purchase, $45,000 from the general fund balance to purchase a new vehicle for Public Works.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second? David seconds. Is there any discussion?
And then what are we doing with the old vehicle again? Or is this an addition to fleet?
This
is
we're going to sell the old
replacement,
one. The old one's at a point where we have some painting repairs, and after review with Nick, we've decided it's not worth.
This is the one that was going to cost like $10,000 to repair?
It's about $7,000 just to fix the gas tank.
Okay.
It's not worth the vehicle.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And without objection, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate you.